Hey guys, and welcome back to Her Revision Podcast, the podcast for women who are rewriting the stories that they told themselves and that the world tells them. And welcome back to another episode that we're going to get into that may make you feel some type of way. And not in a bad way. I'm not tearing into nobody today because I'm not really going to tear into myself. Today's much more of like a soothing, calming, let's give ourselves a warm hug type of episode, okay? Because I feel like it's needed. I got my glass of wine because I think that this episode is something that I have discussed quite thoroughly with my therapist. So I think that we need to set the vibe. I even got my notes here so that I can break this down, just so you know that if you've ever been here, you're experiencing this now, you are not alone. So last episode, we talked about navigating the dark days and how to sit with your feelings without letting them take you under or making you feel like the worst of the worst is upon you and it'll never get better. Without making you feel like you're gonna stay stuck, or it's not okay to feel the emotions that you are feeling. And today we're gonna get deeper into healing, but we're gonna bring it all the way back. Because if I'm being real with y'all, something that I did not say last time, when I do have those dark days, there is a good chance that it's not just about my current self. A lot of it is me feeling it from an inner child perspective. And that's what we're going to talk about. I want to talk about healing your inner child. Now, before you think, like, girl, what does that even mean? Like, I've heard it before. People always say inner child, inner child, inner child. But I'm going to break it down. One, I want to talk about what the idea of an inner child actually means. Also, how the wounds from our inner child can still show up in your grown adult life. It doesn't just fix itself. It doesn't just get stuck in the past. It shows up. And I want to talk about, most importantly, how to heal that. Because a lot of us are going through our daily lives not knowing why we feel some of the feelings, or some of the times we can't even explain it to our current selves because it is things that are uncovering from our past. So I want to talk about it. I think that sometimes when it comes to repeating patterns, when it comes to craving validation, when it comes to struggling to trust people, a lot of that does stem from things that we may have experienced or traumatic events that may have evolved in our childhood. And I'm not saying this or even having this conversation with you to blame the past or to even set the tone that you had a traumatic childhood and everything went wrong and what's to blame with the things that are going on in your life is because of your childhood. Nope. No. But I do want to talk about how, because of the things that may have happened while you were growing up, or things that may have happened in your younger years, may leave you in the position where you have to now free yourself from it. You have to give yourself the power back that you felt or that had been taken away from you when you were a child, right? So let's talk about what the inner child is. The basics. We starting with the basics. What is an inner child? What does it mean? Why does people use the term? Is it a loose thing? Your inner child is basically, to put it plainly, the younger version of you that still lives inside of you. Everybody has that little them. I have a little Jasmine that still lives inside of me, that is still coping and dealing with and experiencing things with me now in my adult life. The part of me that remembers what it was like to be a kid, whether that was the joy of it, the fun, the dreams that I had, the goals, and what I wanted to be, all of that. But also the pain, the disappointment, the things that did not feel fair to me growing up, all of that is a part of my inner child, right? And a lot of the times we don't realize that we do still carry some of the feelings and the emotions from that within us, no matter how old you get. If you don't address it, it will continue, right? If you ever had like this strong emotional reaction to something and then you think later like, damn, why did that hit me like that? I don't even know why I feel this way. If you've ever said something like that, I can't even explain why I'm really as mad as it's your inner child. I'm pretty sure something inside of you is reacting to an old wound that might have made you feel some type of way years ago, and it's coming up again. It's your inner child. Like, for example, as a kid, right, say you never felt heard. You never felt like you had a voice. You never felt like you could speak your mind or express yourself. You were always told to stay out of grown folks' conversation, or you were always talked over because you were young and like you don't know no better. Or when it came to you voicing your opinion or how you felt, you were always told to stay in a child's place. It's not even just annoyance in that moment, but as you grow older, it does still linger deep inside of you. That hurt, that little kid inside of you is saying, when something like this does happen in the present, where you do feel like you're being unheard or those things are still coming up, that voice inside of you, that inner child inside of you is still saying, no one ever listens to me. This is what I'm talking about. Like, this is exactly what I'm saying. That's why. It's your inner child. Or I'll even go a step further. Maybe as a child, you had to constantly prove yourself. You had to constantly be the best of the best. You had to make good grades. You had to do all of your chores growing up. You had to make sure that you were the responsible one. Maybe you were the oldest and you always had to make sure that your siblings were good or whatever the case may be. So now as an adult, you feel like you can never relax. Everything has to be you trying to be the best of the best. You always have to feel like you're responsible. You can't make any mistakes. You cannot be behind. You cannot stop achieving, because you feel like then you're no longer worthy because of how that pressure was put on you as a child. And for me specifically, I can talk about this because that was my lifestyle. When I was growing up, and I am the oldest, I always felt as though I was put early on in a maternal role, so to speak, where I had to have the right answer. I had to help out my mom with essentially like raising us, and I had to be the big girl because she was a single mom, and I had to make sure that if my siblings were not doing well, that I was there to make sure that I steered them right because my mom needed me. I felt like early on the role of me being a child, I didn't get to experience it in the way that I would have if that pressure wasn't on me. And what I will say is, as I grew up, and this is even recently because I had to go through this with my therapist and like have these conversations on why I felt like, oh, if I don't do things for people, or oh, if I say I'm going to do something and then I don't have the capacity to do it, then nobody will want to be around me. If I don't have something to provide for them, maybe I don't have the financials right now, that means nobody will want to be around me. All of that used to chew at me because I placed my value on what I could do for other people based on how I grew up as a child, right? Those wounds don't disappear with age. When they are unaddressed, they continue, they grow with you, and they manifest in your adult situations, in your adult decisions. They shape how we see ourselves. They shape how we react in life, and even how we love, especially how we loved. I put so much emphasis on my relationships not being good in my life if I could not add value. If I could not provide value in these relationships, what was I good for? If I didn't have money, or if somebody reached out to me and they weren't doing the best, and they reached out to me and I didn't have it, I felt bad, and I felt like, oh, damn, I can't even be a good friend or sister or daughter because I can't provide. And then all stemmed from inner child issues, y'all. And if you don't address them, if you don't heal them, they will keep running your life. They will. Now, what I will say is, one of the things that I know and I'm going to get a little personal, but one of the things that I knew for me, my inner child, and my therapist used to do this exercise with me, and some may call it a little cringy, and I did too. But where she wanted me to talk to my inner child, like during certain sessions when I would get overwhelmed or I couldn't identify like what I was feeling or why I was feeling it, she would be like, you know what, let's talk to her. What is she feeling? And then I would give her my emotions and let her know I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm sad, or I'm frustrated, or whatever the case may be. And she'd help me identify that and like probe where those feelings were stemming from. But if I had to describe my inner child, then I would say that she needed reassurance. She needed comfort. Something that I feel like when I think back to my childhood, not that it was ever like oh, I never was comforted as a child, because you don't want it to be where you're just totally blatantly stating, if this isn't the case for you, that your entire childhood was trash. Because no, I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is, though, I needed someone to say, you're doing a great job. You don't have to carry it all. It's not your responsibility. I want you to grow. I want you to try. I want you to experience. I want you to know that you are doing the best that you can. And that is enough. I wanted somebody to tell me that is enough. You are enough. You don't have to be perfect. I think sometimes perfection can stem from our inner child. I think perfection and the idea of being perfect stems from how we were raised and how we grew up in our childhood. I think in my life, I was the one who was deemed the one who had it together, because I feel like that's how I had to be. I stepped into that role very early on, and don't get me wrong, some of the roles that we step in as a child don't necessarily need to automatically be placed in the traumatic stage, or, like, I take pride in the fact that I am someone who is dependable that people called on. I take pride in the fact that I am responsible and that people relied on me. I love being that person. And I'll never take that away from myself. I'm that girl. But what I did not realize for a long time was that in always being the one who gave, I never really had the space to receive. So I became hyper independent. I became the one that never asked for help or never felt like I could speak up if I was struggling or in need, because then it will be looked at as, well, when are you going to give it back, or how can it be reciprocated? And that used to put me in the mentality where I can do it all by myself. Then I don't need anybody to help me with anything, because I'm going to figure it out. I never stopped and thought, well, who's taking care of me? Ever. Y'all, I never, and not until I got older did I ever think, who's telling me that I don't have to have the answers? Who's making sure that I feel safe? I never thought that growing up. And I think that it started to manifest itself into different situations as I got older. And that's the thing about inner child wounds. They don't always come from something big and traumatic. Sometimes it's just what you did not get. My inner child wounds that I'm addressing, that I addressed in therapy, is from things that started to manifest itself that I didn't even realize was my narrative until it was told back to me, until I had to experience it in different situations over and over again. So for me, my inner child longed comfort. I longed just being told that I did not have to have it all together, that you don't have to do it all. Just be a child. Be a child. Be a kid. And now as an adult, that shows up in moments when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel exhausted, when I feel like I'm doubting myself. I crave comfort, someone to let me know, girl, it's okay. You're doing okay. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to take breaks. You are allowed to not be perfect. You are allowed to show up just as how you are, just as who you are. And that will be enough. Because what happens is, when you don't get the void of what you feel like that inner child wound is, your brain will try to create it. But if it's not addressed, it tries to create it in the wrong ways. And by that I mean, if you don't get that comfort from, or that reassurance that you're doing enough, that you don't have to be perfect, your brain will try to create it by making sure that you're overworking, that you're over-explaining, that you're over-pleasing. How you want everybody to be happy with you. Like, what else can I do more? No, that is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. That's not healing. That is why for me, and the number one thing that my therapist had to talk to me about and really get into me, is that inner child work is so important, because it stops you from creating the narrative that in order to heal, you have to overcompensate. What I realize is when you start recognizing the ways that you are still seeking certain things from your childhood, you can finally start giving it to yourself. When I now start to feel overwhelmed, when I now start to feel like, oh, no, wait, I'm getting anxious, or like, Jazz, it's okay. You don't have to have it all together. It's okay to make mistakes. I have to talk to myself. I have to reassure myself that you're okay. In this moment, you are safe. If nobody's going to tell you that, Big Jasmine going to tell you that. You are okay. And I have to tell myself that. I have to give myself that reassurance back, because sometimes we think that healing has to come from external things. No, you have to heal from the inside out. Especially when it comes to inner child wounds, we think that the only way that we can heal our inner child is from the people that made us feel like that, fixing it or rectifying it or apologizing. No, you got to heal that for yourself. Because what happens is, when we wait for external validation, when we wait for external people and external elements to make us feel better or heal parts of us that is still, that we're still working on, we always rely on them, or we will always look to them to correct when they come up again. When you start to heal your inner child wounds, it does not mean that you won't experience those issues. It won't mean that you won't experience discomfort, that you're not going to experience being overwhelmed, being exhausted, doubting yourself. It's not saying that you won't experience it. It's saying that when that problem presents itself, you are going to be able to comfort yourself. So now that we see how our inner child actually plays a role in our lives, how do we actually start healing? And I took notes on this and I broke it down into 4 very good ways to me that I've exercised on how you can start healing your inner child. 1, reparenting yourself. This was actually one from my therapist. You have to be able to give yourself the love, the safety, and the validation that you needed as a kid that you might have never received. You cannot go looking for it in your parents now. You have to do it to yourself. Reparent yourself the next time that you feel overwhelmed. Instead of judging yourself, instead of beating yourself up, instead of trying to figure out ways, okay, how can I make the situation better? Or maybe I need to do this. Quiet your mind and try speaking to yourself as if you were a child. Would you sit there and tell a child, get it together, you're going to be okay? What are you overwhelmed for? Just do what you need to. No. You're going to talk to yourself with kindness. You talk to that child with kindness. I see you. You are safe. You are allowed to feel this. It is okay. Breathe. Reparent yourself. Another thing that my therapist had me do is she had me write a letter to my younger self. And y'all, this was so emotional. If you're not ready for this, I don't recommend. You really need to be in the headspace to sit down, turn off all distractions, and write that letter to yourself as if you're speaking to little you. I swear. What did you need to hear back then? Knowing what you know now, knowing the woman that you are now, or the woman that you want to become, what would she say to little you back then? And the way that I had to look at it when I was writing the letter, I was writing it as if little me's role model was me now. Little me looks up to me now. So what can I say to her to uplift her, to make her feel like she's going to be this great person? Because she is, and I am. But what can you say to little you to make her feel comfortable? Maybe it's, you don't have to be perfect. You are enough. You are always enough. You will always be enough. I've got you now. You are safe. You are protected. The third thing is something that I actually have started doing with chat. Y'all know how I feel about ChatGPT. I practice affirmations. I actually have chat write me affirmations in the morning when I wake up, and I have them change it ever so often just so I can have some freshness, some newness to recite to myself to make me feel comfortable and to make me feel like a new girl. And it's basically a way for me to replace old beliefs or old thought processes or old narratives that I had in my head with new empowering ones to make me feel better and to remind myself that I don't have to earn love. I am love. You are love. I am worthy of love just as I am. Little you, inner you is worthy of love just as she is. So write affirmations for yourself. Use ChatGPT to have it done too. They can do it for you and personalize it, whatever you want to do. But it's just such a cool self-affirming tool. And I think some of us don't realize how much sometimes you just need that. Maybe you can't get it from somebody else. Get it from yourself. What I can't get from somebody else, best believe I'm going to do it for myself. That's just what it is. The last one is to let yourself rest and receive, which basically just means if you were always the strong one growing up, allow yourself to lean on others. You do not have to do it all alone, and I can't stress this enough. You cannot say that you have best friends. You cannot say that you have people in your circle who love you and support you, and in the same token, you feel like you can never depend on anybody but yourself. I don't care. The most powerful people out here, your role models I guarantee you they got a group of people behind them that they can come to whenever. Everybody has people that they can lean on. You cannot do it all alone. And for you to try, that means that you are not really in tune with yourself and you're not trying to heal. I don't care what nobody say, you cannot do it alone. Jesus had 12 disciples plus the whole world. You cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. I cannot stress that enough. You cannot do it alone. So lean on others. I do want to emphasize that healing your inner child does not mean that you're trying to rewrite your past, because you can't. I do talk about rewriting your narrative, but when I speak about the narrative, it is what you tell yourself and what the world tells you, not the experiences that you had as a child, or that you had in life, period. Because what happens is the things that we've experienced shape us to be who we are. But if there are things that we need to reconfigure or thoughts that we need to rework, that's what this is about. This is about giving yourself what you always needed right now. So just know that you do not have to keep living out the same old trauma, old wounds over and over again. You have the power to change them. You have the power to break free from patterns that are keeping you in a cycle. So take a moment today, check in with your inner child. If you got to sit there and just be like, hey, little you, how you feeling today? Are you okay? You are great. You are loved. You are protected. You are enough. And if you need support, I'm right here with you. I just want y'all to know I have been getting tremendous support on the podcast. For all of the new listeners, if you've just recently found the podcast, I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for joining the Her Revision fam. I am moving over to Substack for my newsletter. So the people that are signed up for the newsletter, I will be relaunching on Substack. So you guys will be getting one final email with the link and everything. That way you are aware, as well as the link for my Substack will be in the description below. If you guys are watching me on YouTube, thank you so much, y'all. The number one thing that y'all could do to support me, if y'all care at all, is to please leave a review. That is how I reach my nationally syndicated goal. That's on my 5-year plan, y'all. So just that little 5-star, leave a review. Just rate me 5 stars. Say a little gem or something. If anything that I said today spoke to you, please let me know. Also, herrevision.com is loading. Coming soon. I'll let y'all know more about that later. Until next time, bye.